want to discuss the significance of Lag BaOmer, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Akiva, etc., what the messages are, and indeed it does relate to the Parsha. If we have time, we'll show how it relates to Parshas Emor as well. First, let's look at the first source, famous Gemara in Yevamos that says that Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students. He had 24,000 students. However, during a certain period of time, between Pesach and Shavuos, during 33 days, they all died out. They died. And a mysterious disease called Askara, according to many opinions, that was diphtheria. They all died out, except for 5 students who remained. And the Gemara asks, how could it be that they all died out? Something must have been a reason. And the reason was, they did not conduct themselves with respect one towards another. So you have to understand what this means. The 24,000 students he had were not, people of low character. To be a student of Rabbi Akiva, you had to be a great, great scholar, an incredible scholar. So how do you find 24,000 students who were not respecting each other? And it's more difficult to understand because if you look at the second source, Rabbi Akiva, his motto was, love your neighbor like yourself. That's a great rule in the Torah. So how could it be they did not keep this? You can't just say they didn't give honor to each other. There always has to be something behind behaviors that are not proper. So what was going on over there exactly? And more importantly, why was this specifically happen between the holidays of Pesach and Shavuos? Could happen any time. We just don't look at the things and say, well, it just happened to be at that time. There's something about that period of time that we are in now which could foster such a terrible way of thinking. And that means that this time of year poses such a danger for us. If it could happen to them, it could happen to us. And I think if you look carefully in your calendar, you notice that the biggest Michalowicz arguments between people usually happens between Pesach and Shavuos. You'll notice it happens. A lot of things going on. April, May. That's the time where many job renewals are decided. If you're in the teaching field, usually right around Pesach, after Pesach, they're letting you know if they let you go or not, and that causes lots of arguments. You're coming up to graduations. You're coming up to weddings that are being made. All the preparations for weddings are being made. There's a lot going on in the month of May, June. So contracts, all these things. If you look carefully, if you pay attention, you'll notice most of the issues you have problems with people are this time of year. So there's got to be something behind that. So let's try to analyze this. The Arizal tells us something very amazing. The Arizal tells us 24,000. That's a very unusual number. Why 24,000? Why wasn't it 20,000? In other words, whenever you learn everything, you have to ask a question on everything. Why was it Rabbi Akiva students and not a different rabbi students? There's a lot of rabbis who had students. Maybe not as many as him, but there are a lot of yeshivas. So why was it his yeshiva that got hit? Why was it Badavki had 24,000? Why did God make it that his yeshiva had 24,000? Maybe God could have made students want to go to a different yeshiva. He would only had 20,000. Why do you have 24,000? Why Badavki at this time? You have to always ask. Everything that happens, nothing is just by circumstance. So to understand this, you have to go to the deeper part of the Torah. And you have to where else did we have 24,000 as a significant number in the Torah about people dying? So you have to skip to source 4 for a moment, the book of Bamidbar, where it says at the end of the journey, the Jews were in the desert for 40 years. As they came to the very end, the last couple months, they came to a place called Shittim. A place called Shittim. And what does it say? And the people began to commit harlotry with the daughters of Moab. And they called the people unto the sacrifice of their gods, and the people did eat and bowed down to their gods. And Israel joined himself unto the Baal of Peor, and the angry Lord was kindled against Israel, etc., etc. And look at the end. And those that died by the plague were 24,000. 24,000 men were killed in a plague because they succumbed to idolatry by the daughters of Moab, and also immorality. Now, this already opens up a whole Pandora's box. Number one, since when? These Jews were in the desert for 39 years learning Torah. They lived such a holy life. All of a sudden, they start fooling around with Moabite women and worshiping idols called the Baal Peor. Very, very strange behavior. Indeed, that needs an explanation. But now you know where we get 24,000 from. So now jump back to source number 3. The Arizal, the great mystic, says that the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva were Gilgulim, transmigrated souls of the 24,000 Jews who died in the desert of Shittim. In other words, God arranges that when people die and they do not fulfill the mission in which they were meant to accomplish in this world, their soul comes back into another body, meaning to fulfill the mission then. And hopefully if it gets finished then it reaches its state of peace, it can ascend to heaven and remain there permanently. That's the idea of Gilgul Nishamot. So, says the Arizal, only a great mystic like him could say this, that the 24,000 men who died in Shittim, those 24,000 men who did not reach their tikkun, their correction, for whatever the mistake was, there was a chance to make the correction again now in the students of Rabbi Akiva, the 24,000 students, and obviously they failed as well, and they died. You with me so far? So the question is, so what is the connection? What was the challenge? That the first group failed and the second ones also failed. Okay, that's what we have to understand. So now let's go back and try to understand what was the sin in Parshas Sefer Bamidbar, Parshas Balak, where the Jews indeed, 24,000 men did this. What's going on over here? So, let's give you a little bit of background, at least judge them a little bit favorably. Is that when the men decided to go out of the camp, and they saw there was a marketplace. And there are a lot of old, ugly women running the booths there. So it's nothing to worry. Go to a marketplace, a bunch of old, ugly women, Moabite women. So they start looking at the wares for sale. And they say, it's very expensive, this stuff you're selling here. Says, well, if you want to talk to the owner's in the back. You could talk to her. So, okay, we'll go in the back and talk to her. Well, the woman in the back was not like the woman in the front. The woman in the back was dressed to kill, literally. And this was something the men were not exposed to. And as well, at this point in time, we did not prohibit drinking wine that belonged to non-Jews. So the woman says, come on, come here. I'm sure we can work out a deal here. A little bit of wine, a little of this, a little of that. And they began to get a little bit drunk, and they were extremely beautiful, and this was all a staged plan. This was planned to find a way to seduct the Jewish men. I don't want to get into all the details because I would have to give a whole parsha class on that. There's also lots of other extenuating circumstances that I cannot get into right now. But eventually, they wanted to succumb to immorality. So they said, before I submit myself to you, she pulls out her little getchka, her little idol, called the Peor idol, and says, serve the idol, and then I will submit myself to you. And so it was. They served and submitted. 24,000 of them died. Okay. So now, that leads a lot more explanation. Okay. I'm just doing it very briefly. That's not the main part of the class, so I'm not giving it more coverage. Now, let's discuss what is this idol called the Baal Peor. How do we worship that? Now you're used to worshiping idols by taking an animal and sacrificing it to it, bowing down to it, giving it a gift. Source number 5, which is quite long, and I will summarize it for you, says the following. It says that once a Gentile woman fell sick, and she vowed and said, if I recover, I will go and serve every idol in the world. So she recovered, and she began serving all the idols. She then came to the idol that's called the Peor, the Baal Peor, and she said, how do you serve this one? He said, well, listen, you ingest a lot of diuretics, and you defecate right on top of it. She says, if that's what you have to do, I'd rather get sick again. And then the Talmud goes on and says another story where a Jewish wagon driver came to the Baal Peor and came up with all kinds of novel ways of defecating and releasing himself all over that Baal Peor in ways that the non-Jews never had seen before, and applauded him for his tremendous ways of denigrating the Baal Peor. And the Gemara goes on and discusses how the Jews were so stuck to that Baal Peor when they worshipped it. It wasn't like, they're not interested. They were really into it, big time. So this is all very, very strange. This is all very strange. How could the Jews do such bizarre, disgusting idol worship? And it seems that Jews had a strong feeling for this, more so than even non-Jews. This is part of our Jewish history. This is how you clearly see that Judaism is true, because no other religion would speak so negatively about its own people. Right? We're being very honest about our mistakes and how to learn from them. Okay. But now we've got to move forward and discuss. So these are the issues on the table. How could the Jews do such a disgusting avera of the Baal Peor and also just lose themselves to immorality? How is this the challenge of the students of Rabbi Akiva? Why is this a challenge between Pesach and Shavuos, etc., etc.? So the source number 6, the Medrash says something fascinating. That this place was called Shittim. And there was something wrong with this place called Shittim. And the Medrash says there are certain springs, certain fountains, that if you drink from them, it will cause the people to grow up to be strong. Certain springs, if you drink from them, will cause people to be weak. It goes through all different things that can happen. And it says the springs, the waters at Shittim, they would breed in a person immorality. So when you read this Medrash, you're thinking that the waters of Shittim affected them to act immorally. It's almost as if it was spiked with Viagra. Yeah. And you figure, as the Medrash means, it was spiked with Viagra, and they couldn't, and that caused them to be immoral. Now, obviously, I don't know of any such waters in the world, that waters can do such things. You go to the nicest hot spring mineral waters, maybe it has a few more vitamins, but it ain't going to make you immoral. So obviously, we understand that Tanakh very often refers to philosophies and ways of thinking. They use the description of drinking water from a place, because wisdom is compared to water. You could say, oh man, they're loving that class. They're drinking in his words. Just lapping up his words. Just when a person drinks, when you drink with thirst. You just can't have enough of it. So it can also be philosophies. People can drink in philosophies. And that's what the Medrash is really saying. There are certain philosophies that can make people strong, can make them weak, and others can make them immoral. That's really what the Medrash is saying. There was a philosophy in Shittim that was making the Jews act immorally. So now that only begs the question, what was the philosophy? What was going on in Shittim? So what I'm going to tell you now is based on a mimer, an address by one of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbes, the Rebbe Rashab, and he explains as follows. But first we need a little introduction, that the Hebrew language is a very interesting language, because in the Hebrew language you could have the root of a word, and one root can have opposite meanings. Two different words from the same root will have opposite meanings. For example, you could have the root shin reish shin. What does shin reish shin mean? Shoresh, which means a root. A root. A root of a plant. But the word lisharesh means to uproot. So you could have sharesh means to make a root, lisharesh means to uproot. So you can have things that are the opposite. So let's look at the Hebrew word shita. Shita. Shin yud tes he. What is it? What is a shita?
Method.
A what?
Method.
It could be a method, or we could say even a clear path. A way, a philosophy, a mindset. We call it in Hebrew shitat hachayim, a Weltanschauung for life. You know, what's your shita? What's your philosophy? That's the word shita. A word that's almost the same.
Expertise.
Well,
Shita tova.
Okay, basically a philosophy, a way of life, a well thought out way of life. Now, a word that's almost exactly the same as shita is shoteh. Same letters. Shoteh is the word for a crazy person. A person who has no path in life. So you see the same word. Shita means a person with a reasoned philosophy, and a shoteh is a nut. He's an imbecile, a fool. So that word, no clear path. What he does is not normal. He doesn't go on the normal path. He distorts the path. Someone with a shita says, I have a path. This is the way I do life. Whatever his shita. My shita is, waste not, want not. That's a nice shita to have, right? Other person says, that's normal people have that kind of shita. Crazy people take money and throw it off of a building, You say, guy's nuts, because he's not on the path. In Hebrew, the letters shin and samach are very you can exchange them, exchangeable. Shin and samach, they sound the same, very similar. So we have another word, sound like shota. It's a sota.
Wow.
A sota is a woman who is unfaithful to her husband. She's gone off the path. Right? And you have a similar word, not exactly the same, a shoter, same roots. Shoter is a policeman whose job is to keep you on the path. And a shot is like a whip that keeps you on the path. So you've got words that are very similar with exactly opposite meanings. Even the word star, which is also a shin test. That shin test is a document that maintains order. And we have one more shin test root, satan. Satan tries to pull you out of line and pull you out of the path. So you see that root of shin test, samach test, that is somehow to move. Either you can move on a path or move away from a path. This is interchangeable. Gemara says, for example, a person will never do a sin unless a spirit of insanity has come into his brains. A ruach shtut, a spirit of insanity, right? So the Satan tries to pull people off of the shita, and the shoter will give the guy a patch to keep him on the right path. So all those words are interrelated. All those words, shita, shota, sota, shoter, shtar, shot, all similar words. They're all dealing with a path. Either keeping on the path or going off the path. But that's the whole idea. So now the question is, what was the shita? What was the philosophy? Now look at the word. The place was called shitim. Shitim would be the plural of shita, really shitot, but anyway, it's similar wording again. So what was, they drank in the waters of shitim, means they drank in the philosophy of shitim. What was this philosophy they were drinking in? What was this shita? What was this Weltanschauung? So Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, of blessed memory, the Mashgiach in Mir, said in one of his drushes in 1972, the 34th essay, he explains what was the attraction of the Baal Thor. What was the attraction of relieving oneself in front of an idol? So he says as follows: all forms of religion and idolatry, all forms of worship, have one common denominator. And what is that common denominator? That they all show kavod, they all give honor to some kind of power that is responsible for the person's welfare. We pray to God. Why do we serve God? Because we acknowledge that He has power. We acknowledge that power, we serve Him, and we hope that He will take care of us to some extent or another. Christianity, Islam, same idea. Pagans, they would bring human sacrifices into volcano. Why? So that the God, whatever God is there, will be nice to them. Everyone understands there's some authority that exists, and you must surrender and subjugate yourself to the authority. That's the whole idea of any form of religion, any form of paganism, any kind of any worship. A common denominator is there is an authority that you must answer to. Agreed? All forms of religion. And therefore the individual must show honor to some kind of power. The new radical departure of this was in this story with the Jews in the desert with the Baal Peor. If a person defecates in front of something that represents a symbol of power, an idol represents a symbol of power, and instead of bowing down or bringing it an offering or giving it a gift, but instead what do you do in front of something that is representative of power, you defecate in front of it, means I don't have to give kavod to anybody. And this was the shita, the philosophy of shitim, is that there is no shita. There is no philosophy at all. No holds barred. Even to do something so disgusting to what should be receiving honor. You're doing something disgusting to this, meaning to say that nothing in this world has any meaning and nothing in this world is worthy of worship at all. This was the shita of shitim. The shita is that there is no shita. There is no real philosophy in life. There is nothing that's deemed worthy of respect, and we have to have show reverence for it. Now that's a very seductive form of idolatry, because the nature of the human being delights in lawlessness. Delights, that we call Hebrew hefkerut. That doesn't like to be controlled. The beast inside of us does not like to be controlled. All right? It's very interesting. Sigmund Freud, who was a Jew, and a very brilliant Jew, but very troubled Jew, he gave his explanation for why anti-Semitism existed to the point that it transcends all logic. Why is it that non-Jews really hate Jews so much? His answer is that the Christians never forgave us for giving them Jesus. Meaning to say, is that they resent having lost that happy paganism where there was no responsibility to anything. They resented having to feel guilty and having to be sorry and having to own up to something. And subconsciously, the non-Jews hate us because we gave Jesus to the world. That was Freud's position, right or wrong, but the idea is a correct idea. Mm-hmm. Meaning to say that in general, the human beast does not want to be subservient to anyone. So therefore, the Baal Peor philosophy in Shittim was that there's no reason for a human to hold himself back on whatever you feel like doing. Remember, the animal, go to an animal. Even in the animal in the jungle knows, whatever, a small animal doesn't make trouble with the lion. The lion is the king of the jungle, man. You either like it or not, you better be subservient to that lion. Because if you're going to defecate in front of that lion, he's going to have you for breakfast. Right? But the human being's more clever than that. The human being may say, yeah, maybe I stay away from a lion, but I don't really give him cover. The human being's beastly nature, not the godly part, the beastly part of the human being wants to just be wild. uncontrollable, incorrigible, just any pleasure. You know, if you've watched Lord of the Flies, right? It's a certain idea that all of a sudden the teacher's dead, now it's the laws of the jungle. We don't answer to nobody. Right? And this is an incredible seductive Yetzer Hara because they don't tolerate any philosophy of life. They undermine all philosophies because they don't want to answer to any philosophies. And there's no such thing as a philosophy that you must ascribe yourself to. Any philosophy requires some form of obedience. Some form, no matter what it is. Some form of obedience has to be required. Even if it's live and let live, needs obedience. Because you still can't bother somebody else. But how about a rule that says there are no rules? There are no rules. Now that is the greatest and most liberating type of Yetzer Hara. Now, if you think about it, this is incredible. Now, if you take the Baal Peor that represents structure, supervision, control, and you defecate it, that means we don't deify any controls. What do we deify? Whatever I want to do. Now, it's interesting. Who could fall most into this trap? The answer is a Jew. Because a Jew, listen carefully, because of the godly soul that we have, and as we've been explaining the last 3 weeks since Parsha Shmini, that God was saying that we work under supernatural order. So a person who instinctively has the ability to not be fazed by nature. We've already said in the last few weeks, just because nature says you can't go through, do this, doesn't mean you can't do it. So a Jew instinctively, because of his soul, knows there's no such thing as a barrier for me. Nothing can hold me back except for God. But if a Jew just for a moment forgets about his God, that's what's the dangerous part. The worst anti-Semites in the history of the world have been Jews who went off the path. There's no worse human being in the world, the most dangerous human being, as a Jew who's gone off the path. Much more dangerous than a Goy who's gone off the path. Because a Jew, because of his godly soul, knows innately nothing can constrict me, ever. There's no thing I cannot do. That's true. Now, the only thing a good Jew knows, there's nothing I cannot do because God will not, because I'm holding on to God, nothing can stop me. But then again, you do stop at God. That's the safety valve. So it's good. If you're really close to God, there's nothing I cannot do. But what if you just take God out of the picture? The inherent Jew who says there's nothing that can stop me says, so why do I have to believe in anything? You follow? So that's why these Jews who have been 39 years in the desert, they realize we live miraculous lives. We get water from a rock, manna falls from heaven, protective clouds. We can go anywhere, do anything we want. And when they went out of the camp, they just forgot about God a little bit and said, so what do we care about this poor? We could never get on this poor. No hold bars, no holds barred. Do whatever I want. I don't have to submit to anything. And they forgot, what about God? That was their big mistake. So that's why Jews have to be very careful. Who were the big leaders in the 60s? Woodstock, all this Michigan over there. It's all Jews. All Jews. Who are the ones helping the blacks with the civil rights? All Jews. You know, Jews, misguided Jews. Hollywood, Jews. To be able to just, we can do whatever we want. It's clever Jews who didn't have Torah. That's really why the world suffers so much, because of Jews who go off the path. So that's the challenge. The challenge for us is, and this avodah zarah, this type of worship is very prevalent nowadays. Because nowadays it's exactly this. There are no rules, period. Are there any rules? There aren't really any rules. Even the rules that are there, we know they're not rules. No. Even the freedom, what do you call it, Charter of Rights, that's a mishigas. You've got enough money to get around that too. As long as the cops don't know, there are no rules. There are no rules. There are rules, yeah, because officially we want to sound like we're civil. Officially we're civilized, okay? But when people want to all be gay, so they say gay is normal. Because now we take all the rules and just change the law, make laws to say that you can do whatever you want, and then the laws are fine. The laws are legislated to say there are no rules, and there's nothing to hold you back. Therefore, there's no religion, there's no God, there's no nothing. And if you want to cheat, you do. Just make sure you're not caught, and that's the way you go through university, and that's how you become the top chief of everything that goes around. We're finding this all to be true. Every politician doesn't have one shred of morality. The only smart, the good ones, are the ones that don't get caught. These are people running your country, right? Running Canada, right? Knowing about the dangerous things to people, not saying anything, letting people being exposed to all kinds of problems. They don't care, because all they want at the end is fame and fortune, and that's all. And nobody gives a damn about their country unless it'll give them a legacy. And that's where it's boiled down to. There is no one subjugates themselves to nobody except themselves. And if, to make it better for me, I have to pretend I'm doing it something, then I'll do it. But it's only for myself, it's not for anybody. That's why there's no loyalty in marriage. Marriage means this, you have to submit yourself to the marriage bond. Isn't that something that you have to respect? Who respects marriage? Nobody. Who respects parents? Nobody. Who respects kids? Nobody. Because why? Because you don't have to respect nothing. I'm okay, you're okay. I think I'll write a book about that. Right? That is the philosophy today, Torah. Go back, if you want to just enjoy yourself, go back and take a look at a movie from the 40s. Just to remember what it used to be like. Everyone's dressed pretty normal. The most they would ever do is maybe allude to something that would be immoral. Right? But now, there's nothing left to the imagination. And soon, even prime time is falling by the wayside. There's no rules or nothing. So that's the Baal Pa'or, the human being not wanting to be fettered by anything. This is a major problem. This is a major problem.
I want to say something.
Yes, ma'am.
Today in the news, that there is no election in Israel, they said that the reality bigger than the imagination. Today's world. That reality is bigger than imagination. Like what you want to imagine, reality passes you by far.
Maybe the imagination is
right, because things that we do today so bad.
It's incredible. So now, what's going to be the solution? So for every problem, there's always a solution. And the solution isn't as far away as you think it is. So let's take a look at the Midrash, source number 7. The Midrash Tanchuma says something fascinating. It says, Chatu b'shitim, the Jews sinned in Shittim, V'laku b'shitim, they were punished in Shittim, but listen to this, U'misrapim b'shitim, and they'll be healed by Shittim. How's that? Well, there was something that healed the Jewish people that's made Shittim. When they built the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the wood was made out of what kind of wood?
Shittim.
It says, Shenemar Atse Shittim Omdim. You should construct the Mishkan with wood of Shittim wood, which I believe in English is acacia wood. Acacia wood that's standing. That's not a coincidence. You're dealing with the sinful waters of Shittim, and the very same Shittim is describing the boards of the sanctuary. That's not a coincidence. It's telling us something. Says the Almighty, in the future I will heal Shittim. And he brings a pasuk, and I left out the pasuk, but I'll just tell you outside what the pasuk is. The pasuk, the Navi says, will be on that day, when the good times come, that the mountains will be dripping with wine, and the hills will be giving off milk, and all Yehuda will be flowing with water, and a fountain will flow from the house of Hashem in the Beis Hamikdash, and it will give water to Nachal Shittim. The waters of Shittim will be replaced by the waters of the Beis Hamikdash. In other words, the Navi is saying that the sickness of Shittim will be replaced by the Beis Hamikdash. What in the world is that supposed to mean? And now we're going to come to a very fundamental concept. This is the cure that's going to come at the end of days. At the end of the days, we will cure the Shittim sickness. with a different Shittim. Shittim will be the cure. The sickness is Shittim and the cure will be Shittim. But the difference is, the cure is going to start from the holy Beis HaMikdash. And what does all this mean? So let me explain. It says the Mesilas Yesharim, the work of Luzzatto. He says in the 5th chapter, in source number 8, he says, many times when a person realizes the truth, he's made a mistake, he's lived a mistaken way in a certain area, or in many areas, and it comes the day the person is confronted and says, you know what, I've been living a lie, I've got to change, I know the truth, I accept the truth, and I've got to change. And still he won't change. One of the circumstances is, or maybe he'll slack off a bit, is because he's afraid that people will make fun of him and he won't have any friends. And the power of having a social network of friends is so strong that it impedes a person's ability to change and to grow, even though he knows he should. And we find this many, many, many times. Many times there's a desperate human need to conform and to follow the crowd. And the best person can be led astray because he wants to fit into what others believe in. You know, you come back from a big Shabbaton and you get really inspired and you come home, but then you come back to your family. Your family says, okay, you finished with your Mishigasim over there? Now let's get back to the real life. And he left the Shabbaton saying, well, I'm going to keep kosher, I'm going to keep Shabbos. And he comes back to his wife and kids and this and that. They're not interested in that at all. And he doesn't want to make any problems. He says, you know, it was a nice idea and I know it's true, but I'm going to have to just better to conform to everybody else. Teenagers. That's why it's so, so important. It is so important what school you send your kids to. Even if you have the best home in the world and you think you're going to shelter them, forget it. Your kids are going to do exactly what their peers are doing. Even if they know it's wrong, they're going to do what their peers are going to want to do, because nobody wants to be made fun of. Let's say you have a nice boy, he decides, no, it really is proper. The rabbis did say you should wear a hat when you're davening mincha. This is the halacha. But if you're going to wear a hat, all the kids are going to make fun of him. So he won't wear the hat, because he doesn't want people to make fun of him. This is the way life is. If you're more of in a secular area, even if you were thinking to not be engaged in premarital sex in high school, the pressure is so great that you don't want to be looked at as a weirdo. I have people who told me years ago they had a kid in university who was not interested in fooling around, and everybody thought he was gay, and he wasn't. It comes to the point, if you don't fool around, they think you're gay. Maybe he just wants to be moral. What? Why would you want to be moral? There's a tremendous pressure to conform. That's why so many men find it difficult during the Sphira to let their beard grow. Because everyone they're dealing with who aren't Jews or secular, they don't let it grow. They're going to make fun of him. They're afraid. I'm not going to conform. I have to conform. Whatever it is, we're afraid. But this even after you know what the truth is. You know what the truth is. I just can't. I have to be like everybody else. And that's so strong, it seems there's no way out. It's such a strong force. How can we fight this force? That force. So here is the healing of Shittim when it's used in a holy way. Because what is the power of Shittim? What's the power to defecate on a Baal Pa'or? The power comes from total recklessness. Total lack of respect for any authority. And usually that's a very bad thing. But it's not possible for anything to be totally evil, because there's no such thing as total evil. Everything is sourced in a holy source that's just gone in the wrong direction. And this is such an important point when we talk about teshuvah, changing. Change does not mean you have to be a different person. Change means to be the person you are always supposed to be and are, but you've just been doing it the wrong way. People say, oh, if I'm going to be religious, I'm going to be a totally different person. No, you're going to be the person you are. And all you got to do is do what you're supposed to do in the right way as opposed to doing it the wrong way. Let me explain in this example here. The virtue of Shittim of this Shita to defecate on the Baal Pa'or is, I couldn't care less about social conventions. Everybody respects an authority. Well, I don't. And that's what Woodstock was all about. Woodstock says there's establishment and we are anti-establishment. But what's everybody says? I don't give a damn what everybody says. I'm going to walk right into the principal's office and storm the principal's office and say, you don't run the university anymore. That takes guts. That says just because everybody says so doesn't mean it has to be. And I don't care what anybody else does. Now, generally speaking, that's not a good thing. Why? Because there has to be authority to keep things in place. That's when it's used in an unholy way. But this very same power can be used in a very holy way. The same power. How is that? Look in source number 9, the Mishnah in Eidios. The Mishnah in Eidios says, it's better that a person should be called a fool in front of the entire world. Everybody say, you're an idiot, you're crazy. Your whole life, everyone thinks you're crazy. Better that than to be called wicked in God's eyes for one moment. If God says, you do this, it's better the whole world should think you're a shoteh. Nuts. Because you're not following the crowd. Better, they should all say you're nuts, than God for 1 minute should think that you're wicked. So let's give another example. Let's say you're invited to a wedding. It's 10 people at the table. You know that Lashon Hara is a terrible thing. You know it. And you know what's going to happen to people who speak Lashon Hara, who listen to Lashon Hara. And you're at the table, and of course the most popular person at the table says, do you know what I heard about the rabbi? Do you know what I heard about the Schwartzes, about that ugly divorce? And you know they're about to speak Lashon Hara. Now, what do most people do? They just sit quietly and feel uncomfortable and... But if you drink the waters of Shittim, everyone says, I don't want to start up, I don't want to know what they're going to think. They're going to think I'm a frummy, this, that. If you drink the waters of Shittim, you don't give a damn what anybody thinks. You say, excuse me, are you about to talk Lashon Hara? He says, what do you mean? You're about to say something bad about somebody. You're not allowed to do that. Can you please not do it? Now, that's a tremendous pressure against doing that. You have to be anti-establishment to do that. It's only for what? For what God wants. Only for what God wants. When God wants something from you, and everybody's pressuring you to not be what God wants, you say, well, how can I do it? How can I go against what everybody's saying? Everything thinks I'm crazy. He says, what do you care? Don't you remember 40 years ago, you were one of those kids at Berkeley. And you didn't care what the government said. So you don't have to care what people say now. There's what to learn from Woodstock in a holy way. So you want to put on tefillin. You go to an airport. Go to an airport, right? When I had to go recently, I had to go to the airport. And I had to take a plane early. So, and I was in a place with a very non-Jewish part of the world. And then for a second you debate, well, where am I going to put my towels and tefillin on? Say, to hell with it. And you still don't even know what you're doing. So what do I care? And you just put your towels and tefillin on. And they all see it. So big deal. Even if they'll stare. So, and we're not talking if you're in a place where we're going to kill you, okay. But it's just, well, I feel weird. What are you feeling weird about? Shittim. Don't care what people say. Just do it. Again, we're not talking about doing bad things. You're doing what God is telling you to do. When God says, I want you to do this. So, and you know it's true. We're not talking about where you're not even convinced. You're convinced, it's true. You got to do this. And all your brothers say, you're nuts. Why are you doing this? This is why? Because God says so. But we might not be your friends. What do I care about you? I care about you, but not to the point to do what's wrong. Where do you get that guts from? From Shittim. That's where you get this guts. We call this person that everybody thinks is crazy, we call him the holy shoteh, the holy idiot. Because everybody who's not doing the proper thing thinks you're an idiot. Wait a minute, what's a shoteh? Someone doesn't conform to what everybody else does. But what if everybody else is nuts? What if everybody's immoral? All your friends, Ted and Alice, Bob and Carol, all your friends, and you say, you know what, I still like being with my wife, and I don't plan on fooling around. When all your friends in Thornhill are doing it, and all your friends are subscribing to Dolly Madison, you know, the secretive online, you know, married people to be with other married people that aren't their spouses. You know, and everybody's doing it, and all your friends are pressuring to you. You know, come on, what's the matter? You're such an old prude. And he said, well, guess what? I happen to love my wife, and I don't look at other women. Ugh, you're weird. You're weird. I mean, you still going learning that ancient Talmud? You still keeping kosher? What's wrong with you? You say, well, nothing's wrong with me. Well, you're crazy. I say, you know what? I'm happy to be crazy, and I don't care what you think. Where do you have the strength to do that? As you drink the Shittim waters with God's guidance. Now, it doesn't mean you go out of your way to be in their face. You don't. You know, it doesn't give you an excuse not to be a not a mensch. You know, well, since I'm religious, I don't give a damn what anybody says. We're not saying that. We're saying you do what you got to do, and when people start agitating you, you say, I don't care about your agitations. I'm doing what the Torah wants me to do, and I don't have to put it in their face. But then again, I don't have to take what you want me to do either. So nobody can say that I can't live up to the challenge. You can, because in the side of negative, it works really powerfully. Certainly in holiness, it should work even more powerful. You know, it's interesting. The whole world has a shita of no commitment. Do your own thing. Now, it's interesting. The prophets of yore, what was the term secular people called prophets? You find in the Navi. They were called a mishuga, a crazy man. You know why? Because they didn't care what the rest of the world said. And the rest of the world sinned. And what did they do? They spoke against them in the Word of God because they were rebels against social convention. They stuck to the Shita of the Torah, and they saw the shtus and the silliness of the rest of the world, and they spoke out against it even though they were in the minority. And everybody thought they were crazy. Remember, the definition of crazy is what? A person who doesn't follow conventions. Even if the convention is corrupt, the person who doesn't follow it is called crazy. So a Jew has to say, I'm happy to be called a holy crazy person. That's what you see from here. The Maral says, when the Gemara in Bava Basra says that prophecy now is gone, but occasionally you still see it. You know who has prophecy? Children and crazy people. Children and crazy people. A word to come out will be like prophecy. Why children? Why? Because they rebel against conventions. Children, by nature, rebel against conventions. You say, Tommy, sit down. Why? Why should I? Just as everybody's saying. Kids aren't that, they said, I don't want to do it. Right? That's why there's a lot of problems why parents and kids don't get along. Because kids, by definition, are rebellious. So since they rebel, sometimes it's even prophecy. So now, remember, when the Jews were coming to 39th, 40th year in the desert, that's symbolic. Those 40 years are like a microcosm of all of Jewish history till the end of time. They were leaving Egypt to go to the Promised Land. It was the first time. But it was a microcosm for future history. We're still trying to get back to that Promised Land. And the last stop before the Promised Land was Shittim. And look what all the problems happened. So that means as we're coming now right before the times of Mashiach, we're coming to the last stop. We're in the world of Shittim. And that's the same world we're in right now. And the Shittim goes one or two ways. Either the shtus of the street, and the street says do whatever you want, go where you want, or the shtus of religiosity and God's holy temple, which Rav Kook calls precious foolishness. Where kids feel constricted by the shitos, the philosophies of parents of schools. Schools have rules, the kids don't want to follow the rules. Why? Because I don't want to follow rules. Who says these are the right rules? Right? When Shita, but when Shita, this philosophy is connected to the fountain of the Beis HaMikdash, it gives a strength of character that flows from the Beis HaMikdash. That's what it said, Atze Shitim Omdim. The Shittim woods can be made to stand, to support a Beis HaMikdash with the right stuff. Nothing can shake it. That's what it means. The walls of the temple were atzei shitim. They were walls with stubbornness. You don't care what the rest of the world says. We won't give in to hold up the Beis Hamikdash. When a Jew is strong in his Judaism, he becomes a shote, an idiot for holiness. He doesn't care about other opinions. So the refuah, the healing of shittim, is not to get rid of it, but use it in a way to dafka serve God and to strengthen your faith in God. It's beautiful. It's not, we're not telling you to not be what you are. Be what you are. Just connect it to Hashem and use all that stubbornness and all that strength and all that not willing to give in to conventions, to the crazy conventions that are there, and not to think for a minute that there's anything to consider. Now, Rabbi Yankel Isber, for the Beis Yaakov, he says a beautiful word in the Gemara in Gittin, 10th source. Gemara in Gittin says it was a custom that when a boy was born, they planted a cedar tree. And when a baby girl was born, they planted a shittim tree. And then it would grow for about 20 years into big trees. When they married, the trees were cut down and made as a canopy from those branches. It's beautiful. Isn't that beautiful? Mm-hmm. So Rabbi Yaakov, he asked, why was the woman's branch from shittim? To say that's the power of the Jewish woman. When a woman feels something is right, particularly relating to her children, she will do what she feels is right no matter what anybody else thinks. And that's what's going to keep the marriage and the family strong. She doesn't care about social conventions. You know, when the doctors say no visiting hours for the kid who's in the ICU, the father says, we've got to listen to the doctor. And says, I'm not listening to the doctor. That's my daughter there. If the school says, sorry, there's no more room for your kids in the school, you have to find another school that's not of a good caliber. The Mara says, what can we do? The Mara says, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go right into the school there and sit there until they let my kid into that school. They may call the police and throw it out, let them. There's many stories years ago in the 50s, 60s when it was very difficult to fund the private Jewish schools. And they were unfortunately not as kind to people who didn't have the money. And one day a kid comes home, and they send him home and says, you know, your mother hasn't paid tuitions, you can't go to school anymore. And the mother looks at this letter. She's a widow. What does she have? So what does the mother do? The mother walks right into the executive director's office. He says, what kind of rules are this? He says, these are rules we made because of finances. What could we do? It has to be this way. So you need payment? Yeah, we need payment. He says, here's my engagement ring. You can have it. She did it in front of the board. And the board saw that, ashamed they were. They said, your kid can go without paying. A mother doesn't care about conventions. What's right is right. I don't care what people say. The husband, they're always worried about everything. How's it going to look? Mom says, the hell with how's I'm going to scream and yell till when it's something right. Now, unfortunately, you have women, unfortunately, who skew that. When it's wrong, they do it also. But the women are the ones who are the real eres, the shittim. They really have it much more than men, and those are the ones that keep things going. So shittim can go two ways. It can either go in a way where you have no path, and if you have no path, then you rebel against every path, and that, just to satisfy yourself, that's Baal Peor. Or when the water flows from Jerusalem, and it follows a path of life, and this is who I am, then you say nothing will sway me from that path, and that's what's going to happen before the times of Mashiach. And this is the tikkun, this is the correction of shittim. And that's where you see the phenomena of the Baal Tshuvas nowadays. Who say, I don't care what my parents said. The Torah is right. I love you, but I'll no longer live your life that's not consistent with Judaism. And the parents are furious with their kids. They say, I'm really sorry, I love you, but you're wrong. And what do parents, of course, say? You're crazy. I'm a holy, crazy person, you tell them. You're an unholy, sane person. I don't know if you want to tell it to them, but that's what it is. That's what it is. Now, let's go back to Rabbi Akiva now. Okay, now this is clear. Let's go to Rabbi Akiva. 24,000 students were a tikkun, were a correction of the 24,000 people who died in Shittim. Now, we said, how could they come to not giving honor to each other? Right? That was the question. Why between Pesach and Shavuos? The answer is, if you think about it, Rabbi Akiva himself, if you look at his history, you could say he was an unbelievable rebel himself. Number one, he went against his whole upbringing. He was brought up as a secular Jew. He was so secular, he said, that in his youth, if he would meet a rabbi, he'd kick him like a mule. But then when he saw the truth, he would never give in to that again. He was a rebel against his upbringing. He was a rebel against Rome, the most supreme power that destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, and that said there can be no more Torah learned amongst the Jews under threat of death. And Rabbi Akiva is gathering students to learn Torah. Is that a rebel? I don't care what you say. We're going to learn Torah, and that's all there is to it. Even if you think I'm nuts. Because he drank from the waters of Jerusalem that were flowing through Shittim, and he didn't care what others had to say. When he was away for 12 years to yeshiva, and he's going to come back, and he overhears his wife with a neighbor, and the neighbor says, "What kind of terrible husband you have? He's been away for you 12 years, he hasn't come back. What kind of husband is that?" And Rabbi Akiva overhears, and the wife says, "You know what? I would be even happier if he'd stay another 12 years. He'd care about what his wife wanted, and what his wife wanted was the truth. He should learn for another 12 years. That's what Rabbi Akiva is. He didn't care what anybody would say in a holy way. So now that became the credo of his yeshiva. So his 24,000 students, how were they raised? That you do what's right, you don't care about what others. And that's how we could have 24,000 brave students learn Torah under threat of death by the Romans. Now we come to the trickiest part of this application. You gotta be very careful. So it sounds okay. As long as you're with God, you're tough, you don't care, and that's it. But every correction still has a potential flaw, and here's the problem. It says in Pirkei Avos, "Im ein ani li, mi li." If I am not for myself, who will be for me? It means to say you don't follow convention. Now, the ones who doesn't follow convention, you got to find your way, stick to your path. But there's another line right after. It may not be mili, but ukeshani la'atzmi. But if I'm only for myself, ma'ani, what am I worth? The problem is, yes, I'm finding my way, my holy way. But the problem is, you can be so firm in your holy way, you can't accept that another person can have another holy way of serving Hashem. And that is a problem. If, in other words, you have developed the correct way of serving God, and it is correct for you. For you, your way of serving God is absolutely correct. But if you become so strong in this opinion to the extent, of course, you will not listen to people who are telling you not to be you. But if you look at others who maybe have a different kosher path of serving God, but you denigrate it because it isn't your path, then you've got a big problem. The person who is a Baal Shita, a person who's strong in his opinion, that's good, it's good. It's God's opinion, it's good. But you can be so strong you won't accept any other orthodox Shita. And you'll start to denigrate. If it's not your Shita, it can't be good. That's the fine line. You have to be able to dismiss that which is totally not good as not good. But what are others that are different than yours, and maybe they are good? You know, you happen to be a Litvish Jew who believes in studying a lot of Torah and this, and not to learn so much Hasidus. So why are you making fun of Hasidim? Because it's not your path? Well, it's not my path, it can't be the right path, because I'm doing the right thing. And you know, sometimes you get a little bit too carried away with your path. So the person who has strong Shitas finds it very difficult. That's his challenge. So okay, so now it's good. Everything that's wrong is wrong. I'm strong with mine. I got nothing to worry about. You got plenty to worry about still. Because there's a heck of a lot of other good Jews who have a different path altogether like yours. Will you not applaud their path too, or will you denigrate it? this comes out, for example, there are different philosophies about saying Hallel on Yom HaAtzmaut, saying Hallel on Israel Independence Day. There's different halachic sources behind it. So why is it if you say Hallel and make a party in the middle of Sphira, why do you think the ones who don't are not Zionists and don't love God and don't love Israel? Why do you hate them? And why is the guy who doesn't say Hallel, why does he think the people who do say Hallel are not good Jews either? And why are they both hating each other? You know why? Because they think theirs is the only right path. And you have all these problems. If you can only see your path and you can't see another path, that's not good. And what God wants is that everybody has to find his own path and not put down other paths that are legitimate paths. If it's not a legitimate path, it has to be pulled down. And then we know what a non-legitimate path is. If the path is clearly against Torah without question, if the path is a path that says you don't have to keep kosher and you're still a good Jew, that's not a Torah path. If the path says you don't have to keep Shabbos and you're a good Jew, you don't have to keep Torah and you're a good Jew, that's not a Torah path. But if somebody says, based on the way we understand the Torah, you should spend more time davening. The other guy should spend more time learning. The other guy should spend more time doing acts of kindness. So why are you pulling down his path? That's a major problem. And that's very dangerous. So, the students of Rabbi Akiva, on the one hand, they're meant to make the tikkun. They were living in a period of time when the Romans wanted to wipe out Yiddishkeit. They needed to, God saved those 24,000 souls for about 1,500 years. And said, I need those souls, even though they sinned. I need those souls to put them in a time of Jewish history where the Romans are going to tell the Jews, give up. And God's going to put those souls, and Rabbi Akiva is going to be the chief of those souls. He's going to say, you don't listen to them. And to that degree, they were successful. But it comes as a double-edged sword. You have to be oh so careful that you will still, although you totally don't give a damn about false ideologies, you also have to be careful to not give a damn about other good Jewish philosophies. That's a danger. And that's where you're going to not give honor one to another. And God says, I don't like that either. You see? And this is the problem with frum Jews. Religious Jews have a big problem getting along with other religious Jews who have a little bit different philosophy, and they want to make themselves seem more legitimate. How? By putting down the other one. And say, this is not the way to serve God. How do you know not? Well, in our yeshiva, we only teach them Torah. We don't want them to get a university degree. And anyone who sends their kid to university is a bum. How dare you say that? How dare you have the chutzpah to say that? To write off other Jews like that. And they say that. And others will say, people sit in yeshiva all day long. They're a bunch of bank fetchers. Guys are sitting on their duff doing nothing for the Jewish people. How dare you say that about them? It's a different path. Don't make fun of their other path. If a Jew says, I don't have to keep Shabbos and kosher to be a Jew, then you say, that's not a path. That's hard. Usually we're good at just knocking everybody or accepting everybody. Isn't it easier to keep one mode? Either I accept everything and nothing is important, or I reject everything except me. The real trick is to know where to reject and to know where not to reject. And that's the students of Rabbi Akiva failed in that second part. And why is this between Pesach and Shavuos? So the Shem Mishmuel, the name of his father, the Avnei Esau, says beautifully. You know, when you count Sphira, every night we're counting Sphira. Can I count for you? You have to, last night we counted, today is the 31st day of the Omer. I have to count, you have to, now let's say Kiddush. Can I make Kiddush for you? Yes. I can do a lot of mitzvahs for other people. We can help each other out. But can I count Sphira and therefore you don't count Sphira? No. Everybody has to count their own. Usparta lachem. You have to count for yourselves. Why? Why does everybody have to count? Because everybody has to count. You know what they say? Everybody counts because everybody counts. So I count my way to find who I am. You count your way, because you have a little different soul than I do. And within the rubric of conventional Judaism, my expression is going to be a little different than yours. And that's the way it's supposed to be. It's a healthy way. Now, it's interesting. There are 3 months involved between Pesach and Shavuos. Pesach is in the month of Nisan, half of Nisan. Then the month of Iyar, which we're presently in. And the very end goes into Sivan. Now let's look at the astrological signs and see how this fits in very beautifully. Nisan is what you call, the secular world calls an Aries, which is what? A sheep. Iyar is Taurus, which is a bull. Sivan is Gemini, which is twins. These are Jewish things. The Goyim took it and distorted it. These are Jewish ideas. Got the sheep, the bull, and twins. What's the connection? Well, what do we know about sheep? Sheep, they all do things together. They all bleat together. They all follow the crowd. They're one crowd, right? And when we went out of Egypt, God took us all as one crowd. One crowd. Very nice. But then we come to the month of Iyar, is the bull. The bull goes on his own. The bull doesn't follow the crowd. The main part of the sphere, 30 days of the sphere, the main guts of the sphere is the bull. It's an individual working on yourself. You count for yourself, find your own way, not to worry what other people say. This is the way I'm going to be the best Jew I can be. And that's Iyar. But that's not good enough, because there's still 1 more month. There's still 6 more days to the sphere. And that is Sivan. Sivan is Gemini, twins. Twins mean not only do I exist, but I got a twin who exists as well. When we came to Sinai, they all came with one heart. They may have been different people, but one heart. In other words, the Gemini twins means after I'm the bull and I find my own way, I can still be a twin and see the beauty in the other person's service to God as well. And that's what's supposed to go on between Pesach and Shavuos. Pesach, we all went out together. Yes, we all had a basic similarity. But over the next 49 days, we're meant to look at our own strengths and find what that is and be happy and confident. You know, a lot of people say, you know what kind of Jew I'm going to be? Just like the rabbi. No. Not like the rabbi, not like anybody. Just like yourself. You have to look into yourself. What's the best Jew I'm supposed to be? And not be intimidated by other Jews who are doing what they're supposed to be doing. But once I'm very solid who I am, I run the risk of saying, that my way is the good way, everybody's way is no good. Then comes Gemini and says, you know what, everybody can have their right way, as long as there's a general rubric of what Judaism's about, and mutual respect, that's fine. And this is incredible. It means you have to work so hard to find the unique greatness of self, to not worry what other people think, but not to fall into the trap and say, and therefore I don't think what you do is good either. No, it's still good. Only Judaism asks this of people. And then you're ready to get to Torah. So that's why at this point in time, the students of Rabbi Akiva, you know, when we count, we say, today is the 31st day of the Omer. That was 7 weeks and 3 days. We count days, we count weeks. Days are individual, weeks is a group. We could say the problem with students of Rabbi Akiva, they counted days, but they didn't count weeks. They worked on their own selves. But the more they worked on themselves, the more they began to disregard others. And they lost that part. And that was the big mistake. And that's why they didn't give itself the right respect and honor. It's the old trap of the firm religious Jew. So now, we come to Lag BaOmer. What happened on Lag BaOmer? Finally it stopped. The death stopped. There were only 5 students left. Yeah. Rabbi Akiva turned to the 5 students and said, don't make the same mistakes these guys made. The premier of those 5 students was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the father of the Zohar. And he died also years later, he would die on Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer. What do we know about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? Shimon Bar Yochai was also very strong-minded, unbending. The Torah Talmud tells us a story where he was sitting amongst a bunch of rabbis. And one rabbi was extolling the virtues of the Roman Empire. And Shimon Bar Yochai, in confidence, with a small group, says, don't you be fooled by a minute by those Romans. They're making bridges to make their own money. They're making this for this and this. They don't love Jews at all. And you got to be careful from them. They're wicked people. He was saying the truth, but it was in confidence. Somehow that confidentiality was breached, and the Romans found out about it. He has to run into hiding. He runs into hiding with his son Elazar for 12 months in a cave. Okay, what are they doing for 12 months in a cave? Learning Torah, creating the Zohar, learning the deepest aspects of the Torah. After 12 months, a voice said, you can now go out. He went out, him and his son, and what do they see? The first thing they see, a Jew plowing his field. And they look at this incredulously, because remember where they're coming from. They were on such a high level. He says, what? You could be learning Torah. That's the way to go. And you're wasting your time on a farm? So mystically, whatever this means, they started looking at the fields, and the fire that came from them was burning up the countryside. Then a voice from heaven came and says, I didn't send you out to burn up the countryside. Go back into the cave. And they go back for a year. Come back after a year. He comes back with his son. His son, again, they see people plowing. And the son's ready to burn up the countryside. And Rabbi Shimon says, my son, it's enough just me and you know all this great Torah. Let's not expect it from others. Rabbi Shimon got the message. You could be strong, you could be shitim, but you have to understand that there are other Jews as well. And then at the end of that story, he says, now that we've come this far, and so many things have happened, let me go to Tiberias and see how I can help out all the Jews. So Hashem wants every Jew to have a fire. And that's the idea of fire. Why do we have so many fires on Lag BaOmer? Shum Bar Yochai was a fire. When he died, there was a fire surrounding his casket. What's the idea of fire? Fire means you're on fire. You so strongly believe in what you believe in, nothing's going to douse out that fire. And that's why in Lag BaOmer we have all these fires, not just Jewish pyromaniac legitimacy. Fire means no one's going to put me out. I believe in what is so good about Judaism. But you have to be careful that that fire doesn't burn other people. That's the message of Lag BaOmer. Now, what in the world does that have to do with this week's Parsha? I have to tie it in just 2 more minutes. This week's Parsha. This week's Parsha begins with the special laws of the Kohanim. It says, Emor la Kohanim v'amarta lehem. Speak to the Kohanim and speak to them. Rashi says, why did it say twice? Speak to them. The answer is, once for yourself and once to make sure your kids do it. So rabbis will ask, what's going on? All Jews, if you're Kohanim or not, you got to make sure your kids do it. What's so special about Kohanim have to make sure their kids do the laws? Because Kohanim have special laws. The answer is, that's the whole point. Can you imagine when we lived in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, and your little kid is a Kohen, and he's playing ball with his friends, and they're playing baseball, and your little kid's in center field, right? They hit the ball, goes over the fence, and the ball goes into the cemetery. And they say, get the ball. I can't get the ball. It's in the cemetery. I'm a Kohen. Yeah, but we won't be able to play. Well, I can't go. Well, okay. So the non-Kohen goes in and hops over the fence and gets the ball. Then a couple of days later, say, we decided we're going to play in the cemetery today. So the little Kohen says to his friend, Abba, can I go play with your friends? Where are we going? We're going to play in the cemetery. You can't go. Why not? All the other kids can go to the cemetery. Well, you can't. You're a Kohen. But that's not fair. So Torah says, you know what? I've got to tell you twice. Make sure your kids listen. What's the Kohen represent? The Kohen is a Jew. He's different than the other Jews. If we all fast on a certain day and everybody else fasts, I might not like it, but everybody fasts, we suffer together. I keep Shabbos. I might not like Shabbos, but everybody else is keeping Shabbos. It's easier for me to do things that are hard to do if everybody's doing it. Right? But the Kohanim, they got all these laws that apply only to them, and they're the vast minority of all the Jews. And you have this Kohen in a class of 30 kids, and he's the only Kohen, and everybody says, we're going to have a great party at the cemetery. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. There's all kinds of laws. Foods to eat. Ritual purity, they have to have much higher levels of purity. He turns to dad and says, Abba, why do I have to do this? All the other kids don't have to do it. So God says, you got to warn them really good to not be influenced, even by good Jewish Orthodox Jews, but you're different. And to realize how different you are. So that's a good message for the Kohanim, but it's really now a good message for all Jews, because unfortunately, we're such a minority in this world. We have to act like the Kohanim. And that's why God says we're a kingdom of priests. The hardest part of being a Jew is, you know what? Because all the Goyim don't live the way we live. And that's been the whole theme of this whole book of Vayikra, is what? We live a supernatural life that's different than a non-Jew. A non-Jew can speak Lashon Hara and he'll still go to Olam Haba. A non-Jew can eat pig and he'll still go to Olam Haba. 99% of people you see all day long don't have to keep one shred of Torah, and their lives are okay for them. but you can't live that way. And you know what? Everyone thinks I'm crazy that I don't laugh at the off-color jokes at work. Everyone thinks I'm crazy that I won't have the sandwich at McDonald's. Everyone's crazy that I'm not going to take my exams on Shabbos. Everyone thinks I'm crazy that I wear dresses that cover my knees and I don't expose my cleavage to people. And everybody thinks I'm crazy that I wear a hat. Everyone thinks I'm crazy that. Enough! I live a supernatural existence. Finished, and I'm proud of it. And I don't care what anybody says. That's how we have to live. But if you live that way, you got to be awfully careful when you turn to another good Jew who's a lot different than you. You still have to respect him too. And you're going to say, that's a lot to expect. And God says, that's right. That's why you're superhuman people. You have a godly soul, and you're able to do that. If we do that, we can bring the Mashiach. If we don't, 24,000 students die. It's something we can do. So Hashem should give us the call. What is this week all about? This week's all about find something that you know is true in the gut of your heart. You know it's true. And you know you're not doing it because you're just afraid what everybody thinks. And just say, darn it, I'm going to do it. In the merit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, I'm going to do it. When you look at that fire in B-Omer, that should be your fire. And when you start looking at other religious Jews who perform their religion different than you, I'm going to stop ridiculing them. Maybe I'm going to learn a little bit more about the way they do things, so I'll understand why they do what they do, and maybe I have something to learn from them too. If you do that, then B-Omer is a beautiful holiday.